So of all the very exotic habitats we've built over the years, we hardly ever talk about some of the habitats for the animals that you'll find here in Canada and in our own backyards. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go behind the scenes and take a look at Toronto Zoo's America's Pavilion. Back in 1999, Toronto Zoo had this idea that, hey, maybe we should space things out and design things in a regional, continental perspective. Novel idea, actually revolutionary at the time. And that's where the pavilions started popping up, from Africa to Americas and such. And the Toronto Zoo actually, fun fact, was the first to design the geographical divided areas. And this actually made them a world leader as such and inspired it worldwide. So the America's Pavilion itself is home to a variety of animals native to North and Central and South America. It showcases the diversity of the wildlife that you would find across these regions.
There's a couple very cool spots in the Americas. One of my favorite small pavilions at the Toronto Zoo. I don't think it gets enough credit, and we got to do it in a number of habitats for this. One was a collaboration piece with the Toronto Zoo itself. While we built the American alligators, we did the steel, the lath, the fiber coat, and then the zoo staff was, I believe, training somebody at that point. Don't quote me on that. We did all that base structure and shaping, and then they got to practice their finished coat. Another habitat we got to do was an old leaky habitat for the spotted turtle and an aquarium in that. We re-waterproofed it and then tested it and recoated it with our panels on the outside so it fit that natural environment a lot more than the exposed aggregate poured concrete that was there. Then another habitat we did was a series of 3 frogs. Now, I believe one was completely aquatic, one was not aquatic at all, and then the other one was particularly special because it had the small waterfall in it, and it also called for these planters. Now, if you're wondering why small enclosure with planters is special, as typically it wouldn't be, but in this case was the first time that I had ever bought a 3D printer, and what the spec was for these large rebar armatures to try and make this petite tiny planter in this small enclosure. And so what I did was I actually had a model made up of different sizes of this planter that could be mounted onto the concrete baggings, and then I was able to actually coat the outside so that it looked like part of the rock and looked like it was spec to be. This was a lot of fun for me, a big challenge, and something that I had to do mostly in my own off time because it took so much longer than I could ever charge for. But it was a big learning lesson and something that we've planned to incorporate for the rest of our careers. The different elements that we really tried to incorporate for that small frog, especially the one with the water feature, is to actually create like a miniature version of their real life habitats the way that that would be.
While it is one of our biggest challenges to make things, as visually stunning as possible, we do love always to take in all the factors and the science behind it, and even a lot of the research that the Toronto Zoo does, so that we can meet the habitual needs of the animal itself for the kids and visitors that come, and take them to that place that they might not normally be able to see. There's a couple things that we do from a theming perspective that sort of sell that sense of travel for the guest and bringing them through the different habitats, and the zoo is great at helping with that. It's all about all your senses and the little subtleties, like playing sounds of birds as you're walking through the exhibits, or water features or plant life. All these things, it's not just about our rock or our tree work. Everything is layer upon layer.
One of the things we rarely get to talk about is all the work that goes in after we've built the habitat. And I really appreciated all the work that went specifically for the frogs habitat, because wow, did it look barren. The fact that they were able to add all these different elements to make this feel like a really natural habitat. We don't typically put in the soil and the organics of the trees and like anything real for these type of enclosures, and they did a really good job.
One of the unique features that I love about the pavilion is it's focused on creatures that thrive in various aquatic environments, and the pavilion uses that advanced climate control system to replicate the various conditions. And it is definitely humid in there. You know, from working in these pavilions, it can get very, very hot. But you know, this allows to control that temperature year round for the animals, and then of course, you know, for the visitors get to enjoy that. Walking from pavilion to pavilion, whether it's outside in the snow, they still get to get the lush rainforest feel once they enter. Alongside with those live animal exhibits, the Americas Pavilion features a lot of interactive displays, which is a great part about this, and it kind of bridges some of our experiences with, you know, museums and science centers where they have the interactive displays as well, that are going to take that education further and really just take the guest there.
There's another habitat that I really want to talk about, and that is the boa. It was initially stated to be a bat habitat. We actually brought in our panels from a local quarry area where the bats are common, and what we did was there was this teeny tiny little slip, and Martin and I had to shove and manually bring in all these giant panels, mind you, as big as we possibly could. We wanted it as highly detailed as we possibly could as well. So we slipped this through what felt like a back alley, very, very difficult to get in. With glass on either side, we had to be very, very particular, make sure that we got those panels in perfectly. We also had very minimal room to work with, which is also difficult when you need a frame behind that panel. So what we did was we squeezed ourselves in. There was zero room for error. We welded those in. We did the last thing. We did the fiber coat finish, painted, and then we found out about 4 months later that no bats were ever put in. It was actually meant to be a snake enclosure. So obviously they added a number of different elements like trees, fallen logs, different mulch. So props to the zoo for pivoting, doing a great job doing that and making it look out of this world. So what I wanted to talk to you about for the Americas was the waterproofing. This was actually, for whatever reason, an entire grouping of years that a similar type of waterproofing was spec'd. I believe it was all the rage. There's something called the Zypex. This had this unique ability to crystallize and fill in any types of cracks or voids and actually make it a watertight item. There's 2 different types of this waterproofing. We used both. One was actually in the mix itself, and the other one was topical. And these are both cementitious waterproofings, and I gotta be honest, I hated both of them. The brush-on seemed a little bit better than the integral, but what seemed to happen was that you would need it to get wet first, and then as it saturated, the crystals would form, and then it would become watertight. And usually it did work, but it would always take this initial saturation for that to work. And so that's why we started introducing topical as well. And frankly, even if it's spec now, we'll go an extra above and beyond and actually put like a fish-safe liquid rubber over it or a EPDM rubber liner over it so that we know for a fact that it is truly waterproof. The first habitat we ever actually did in there was for the blanding turtle, and we actually re-waterproofed and recoated that whole piece. And I absolutely love getting to do this. I thought that getting to work small sometimes makes you concentrate on totally different details. And I absolutely love that. Always getting to do any type of terrarium or aquarium is a lot of fun. Yes, building big things is fantastic, something you can sink your teeth into, but getting to build small is equally as enjoyable. It's also super rare that we get to work hand in hand with the zoo staff. They're a very creative group that I absolutely love to talk habitats with. Their creative team actually comes and checks out our work each and every time. We discuss different options, color palettes, and so it's always a pleasure working with them. This was super unique because we actually got to work hand in hand, creating some of their vision, building some of the structure, doing the fiber coat so that they could concentrate on that final bit of art. Not our typical, I don't think we've ever done it before, probably won't do it again, but it was still an absolute experience. And I love getting to see their creative works. Now, if you've enjoyed this behind the scenes look at how these enclosures are built, what goes into them, and of course, all the important work that the Toronto Zoo and institutions like that do around the world, make sure to leave a comment below. Make sure to hit the like button, and of course, subscribe, because we're going to have plenty more interesting projects in the future.